Holds a bachelor's degree in creative writing with a minor in religious studies from Northern Michigan University, and now is a current double degree student in the Rosemont College MFA and publishing programs. She has acted as editor-in-chief of The Lightkeeper, now known as the Or Ink Review, and does marketing and publicity for the Rothala Review. Sara currently lives in Hatfield with her 3 meaty cats and does customer service for a bridal shop while working on her villain-centric YA fantasy novel. Please welcome Sara Kiiskila.
This is a short story called A Visit to the Cardiologist. Mr. and Mrs. Franklin Peterson cordially invite you to the wedding of their daughter, Emily Ann, to the Honorable Mr. James Patrick Harrison. Tossing the invitation back onto the crowded work table, Richard tried to return to the heart in front of him. The aorta had fallen loose, and there were at least 2 pulmonary veins needed to be repaired. As he worked, he couldn't help the way his eyes would stray back to the Golden Boss name on the parchment. The bell over the door rang, signaling a new visitor just as he was finishing the last scene. "You're early, Mr. Smith," he said, without turning around, "but your timing is as perfect as always. I was just reinforcing last month's repair. Did the loaner give you any problems today?" "So, Smith is still coming to see you." Richard froze at the sound of the voice that definitely did not belong to Mr. Smith, and the soldering laser fell to the table, burning a hole straight through a stack of organic patches. Scrambling to rescue the expensive material, he whipped around the face of Richard. The young man wore a simple but well-made suit, a blood-red cravat that Richard himself had worked extra hours to afford was tied around his throat. "Hi, Richie," he said. "James, what are you doing here?" Before James could respond, the bell rang again, admitting the expected Mr. Smith. "James Harrison, so good to see you out and about, my boy. I would have expected you to be trucked with all the planning for your big day. The missus and I are looking forward to it." Helping the elderly gentleman into a seat, James winced. "My fiancé and I look forward to your attendance." Letting Richard open his chest to disconnect the battery-powered loaner, Smith gestured to the invitation on the table, only pausing slightly as his original heart reconnected. "I see that Richard here has been invited as well. Good to see the Petersons don't adhere to the antiquated notion that the help should be kept separate until needed. But I do guess it's the least they could do after he saved old Frank a year ago." "It's nothing, Mr. Smith," muttered Richard, wiping a few drops of blood and oil from the man's chest before closing it. "I was just doing my job." "Nonsense. Without you, Frank would have had to get one of those ridiculous all-steel models. You are the only cardiologist in the city that was capable of saving the original organics. We are born with organic hearts, and I say we keep it that way as much as possible." Smith stood and stretched, allowing the blood to settle into the intended pathways. "If the Petersons hadn't already gone to you, I would have been glad to sponsor you myself. Can't let a talent like yours waste away due to lack of funds now, can we?" "You're too kind, Mr. Smith." "Now I expect you to visit with me at the wedding. Should be a grand event, especially after that little debacle from last year." Smith turns towards James again. "What was her reasoning again?" Richard felt James's eyes dart towards him, but he had already turned away. "Victoria says she couldn't marry a man who was in love with someone else." "Silly girl, anyone could see that you were glowing with new love at the time. But at least you found Miss Emily, right? All's well that ends well, in my opinion." James nodded but kept silent. It wasn't until Richard shut the door behind Mr. Smith that he spoke again. "Good to see that Smith is still kicking, no doubt due to your handiwork. What do you want, James? You know Miss Emily doesn't want you anywhere near the temptation that apparently I am. As Smith said, you're the best cardiologist in the city." Richard turned to see that James had taken the seat that the older man had just vacated. He had already removed his jacket and buttoned his shirt to reveal the bare skin of his torso. "You're the only one I trust to look after me." Shaking his head to clear his mind, Richard grabbed the sterilized loaner from the shelf before shakily switching it for the one in James's chest. His fingers lingering longer than they probably should have. It's broken again. The heart was beating a slow staccato on the table in front of him. Using the corner of his leather apron, Richard wiped a trickle of blood from the right chamber, revealing a jagged tear. Richard lowered several lenses over his eyes until he reached magnification strong enough to see the individual cells. Examining the edge of the tear, he paused as he glimpsed the faded name of James's first love, Victoria. He still felt guilty over his part and they were calling off the wedding. During their rare nights together, James had insisted that his feelings for her had ended, but to see proof that they had existed at all still caused a pain of jealousy in him. His only consolation was that he could see how his own name remained unfaded. He shook his head again. Now is not the time for what ifs. Can you fix it? James asked softly, his frame coming to stand close enough that Richard could feel the heat of his body along his back. Not this time, he said, raising the lenses again and rubbing the back of his neck. The cells themselves are intact, so the edges of the tear may heal naturally. However, any emotional stress could cause even more damage. Is there nothing that can be done? It's possible I could use tissue from another heart to repair the hole, but it would take some time before donor could be found. What about steel repair? You've done those before. Richard ran a finger along the seam of seam along the other side. Steel and organics flowed together, and he could feel the steam pistons under the right ventricle. It's too risky. It would cause the percentage of organic material to decline enough that a total failure poses too serious a risk. James sighed and put a hand on Richard's shoulder, pulling back when Richard shrugged it off. Thank you, Richie, for at least taking a look. I'm sure Miss Emily will be pleased to know that her work has become permanent this time. A silent moment passed, but James continued in a strained voice. Then again, maybe I won't mention it. She might decide one of those metal replacements is needed, and I'd rather not risk my feelings. Why must you put up with this? Richard stood up to face James, grabbing the other man's hand in both of his and trying to catch his eye. It's not the first time she's harmed you, using those you love against you. Even if by some miracle your heart does heal itself, you know it won't be the last. James looked away, but didn't pull his hand back. You know why. This is our only choice. There's too much writing on this. If she even knew I was here right now, you know I don't care about that. Let them keep their money. Richard placed his other hand on the side of James's face, forcing the other to look straight in his eyes. Don't marry someone you don't love for my sake. I couldn't stand to be the reason for your unhappiness. Silence filled the workshop for long moments. Eventually, James stepped back, reached for his heart, but Richard grabbed his wrist. Wait. His eyes were bordering along the edge of tears. There may be something else I can try. James watched as Richard opened up his own heart cavity and switched his own beating heart with another donor. He placed it down on the table and picked up a scalpel. James grabbed his arm in a tight grip. What are you doing? The only thing I can do. Richard yanked his arm free and placed the scalpel back in the table. Reaching up, he placed his hand softly on James's cheek, smiling sadly when James instinctively leaned into the touch. Maybe I'm just being selfish, but if giving you a part of my own heart will prevent you from having to replace it, I will gladly do so. A single tear slipped down his cheek, but James wiped it away. We both know she would never allow you to transfer your feelings from me to the new heart. And I wouldn't be able to live with the knowledge that everything we shared is just gone. That she finally succeeded in erasing my name. Paused. Unless, of course, you want to forget. Richie, James gasped. You know I would never want. Then please, James. Richard gripped both of James' hands in his own. Let me do this. It'll be my wedding gift to you. Richard turned back to the two hearts on the table. Struggling to keep his hand steady, he carefully removed the damaged area and switched it with the corresponding section of his own. When the work was finished, Richard batted James's hands away and moved to open James's chest cavity and replaced the loaner with the original himself. Tears fell onto the shirt and coat as Richard did up the buttons, carefully redoing the cravat. Richard finally looked into James's own face. There, all finished. Forced a smile. Try not to break it again, okay? I don't think Miss Emily would like you coming back. James cradled Richard's face in his hands and kissed him hard. Richard tasted salt as his arms wrapped around James's neck and desperately pressed their bodies together. This is what they had. It's the one thing Miss Emily must never be allowed to take from them. These stolen moments, these intense flares of need and desire, they may never be allowed to see each other again, so they breathed each other in as much as they could, lips bruising in the effort to bring this one last kiss into their memories. James pressed Richard back until he was leaning against the work table, the desperation filling them both and tuning out the sounds of tools clattering to the floor. Their hands moved everywhere when suddenly the low battery alarm in Richard's own chest sounded, warning him that the loaner was going to soon die. Richard pulled away, turning his back to the man. You should go now. I'm sure Miss Emily is waiting for you. Richie? Richard could hear him move closer, but the steps paused. Thank you, Richie. The steps retreated, and Richard refused to turn and torture himself at the sight of James walking out the door and leaving him behind again. Using the work table to hold himself up, Richard ran a finger along the new seam of his heart. His hand had shaken a bit during the procedure, so the soldering wasn't as smooth as usual. The rough edges mimicked the jagged edges of the tear that now ran along the only name that Richard himself had never carried, James.